The chime of the bell beckons us into a sacred time. Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston, where we widen love's circle by honoring the inherent worth and dignity of all. We extend a heartfelt and inclusive invitation to join us in meaningful worship and in service to the world. We greet all those who join us this morning, those here in our sanctuary, all of our many online viewers, así como el creciente número de participantes bilingües que nos acompañan desde sus hogares. Mask wearing in the sanctuary is currently optional, but you are encouraged to continue to wear yours if you are more comfortable doing so. I invite newcomers to join us for coffee and conversation in Channing Hall after the service. And I invite members to seek out someone you have not yet met to make a new friend. Now, please join Dr. Rock for our first hymn.
Good morning. I invite you to open your hymnals to number 1017. That's the Teal book, 1017. Then rise in body or in spirit, and let's sing together.
Our call to worship this morning comes from former president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, Susan Frederick Gray. If you are an immigrant, a refugee, undocumented, you are welcome here. If you are Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Christian, Zoroastrian, Buddhist, a theist, or an atheist, you are welcome here. If you are gay or straight, a woman or a man, transgender or queer, you are welcome here. If you have a disability, visible or invisible, you are welcome here. If you want for nothing, or if you struggle each day to make it through, you are welcome here. If you are heartbroken, angry, or afraid, you are welcome here. If you feel strong, powerful, and ready, you are welcome here. if you hold a dream of peace and love in your heart, you are welcome here. Whoever you are, you, your family, your whole self is welcome here. For this is a community of diversity and inclusion, a community of justice, love and justice. It is good to be together. So come, friends, let us worship together.
Celebremos compartiendo nuestras vidas, encendiendo esa luz.
Would you please join with me in reciting our congregational covenant found in your order of service? Love is the spirit of our congregation. Service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to encourage one another. Thus do we covenant.
This is the time during the service when we pause for contemplation. It is the time when we set aside rushing and distractions, the scurrying and the disruptions. And so, with intention and care, we carve out this time to enter into a time of quietness, a stillness we hope may be the threshold to a new peace and understanding. This is a time that some call meditation and others name prayer. Settle your body into a comfortable place. Breathe with me as we gather to do the holy work of kinship and support. Open your mind, open your heart. God of many names and mystery beyond all our naming, we are grateful for this place of quiet so that we may link one to another and heart to heart in the stillness and calm of the moment. We have gathered to open our hearts, to hold the suffering, care for the mourning, and celebrate with the joyful. We echo the words of William Ellery Channing, who prayed, "God deliver us all from prejudice and unkindness, and fill us with the love of truth and virtue." We have gathered to open our hearts, to pray over those who are struggling, and to give thanks for those whose spirits overflow to bolster those who are struggling. We echo the words of Hosea Ballou, who said, "It is my humble prayer that I may be of some use in my day and generation." We pray in the names of all those known and unknown, present and absent, remembered and forgotten. We pray in the names of all helpers of humankind. Amen. We pause now together to lift up that which sits heavy and light on our hearts. We send our love and support to the minister and congregation of Community Unitarian Universalist Church in Plano, whose building was damaged in an act of arson 1 week ago. We now turn to a practice inspired by African, indigenous, and pagan traditions. We say aloud or bring to mind those who we wish to be held by the loving embrace of this religious community. They are part of the great cloud of witness and memory, and we will, even if we do not know their names, hold them in our hearts. In this great cloud of witness and memory, amid this beloved community, we hear these names and hold them in our hearts. Let us remember the suffering and joy amid and among our community that we do not know. We pause in awe and wonder of the beauty, diversity, and mystery that is life. In the spirit of love, in the spirit of hope, and in the spirit of compassion, I invite each of you to enter into a time of silent prayer, meditation, or reflection.
Each week, our morning offering is shared with an organization that shares our Unitarian Universalist values and through which we may live out our principles in the world. This week, that organization is the Montrose Center. Since 1978, the Montrose Center has helped LGBTQ+ youth and adults live healthy, actualized lives with the tools and resources they need to feel affirmed. The organization provides an array of programs and services, including mental and behavioral health, anti-violence services, support groups, and specialized services for youth, seniors, and those living with HIV. It now operates the nation's largest LGBTQ-affirming, affordable senior living center in the nation, the Law Harrington Senior Living Center. As the politics of cruelty make living in Texas more and more dangerous for sexual minorities, especially the trans community, our support of organizations like the Montrose Center is more important than ever. Those in our sanctuary will find the instructions for text giving in the order of service, and those watching the live stream will see the instructions on your screen. Our regular Sunday morning offering collection invites us to weave a tapestry of love and action. We ask you to give generously. An offering will now be gratefully received.
My home is
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
Please join with me in the words to dedicate our offering found in your order of service. To the work of this church, which is building a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives, and these are our offerings.
If you turn the page in the order of service, you'll see the readings that we're about to do, and then once we've done the readings, we'll come back and sing Building Bridges right before the sermon. Our first reading is from the writer and anthropologist Zora Neale Hurston's text, Mother Catherine. It is her account of the time she spent with a well-known and unorthodox religious leader in New Orleans' lower Ninth Ward. Theologically, Mother Catherine was a Universalist, but she had no connection with the organized Universalist movement. Here are Hurston's words. I spent 2 weeks with her and attended nightly and Sunday services continuously. Nothing was usual about these meetings. She invariably feeds the gathering. At the Sunday service, the big coffee urn was humming, and at a certain point, she blessed bread and broke it and sprinkled on a bit of salt. This she gave to everyone present. To the adults, she also gave a cup of coffee. It was something, too, to watch the faith it aroused in her followers. All during her sermons, 2 parrots were crying from their cages. A white cockatoo would scream when the shouting grew loud. 3 canary birds were singing and chirping happily all through the service. A donkey, a mother goat with her kid, numbers of hens, a sheep, all wandered in and out of the service without seeming out of place. A Methodist or Baptist church, or one of any denomination whatever, would have been demoralized by any one of these animals. 2 dogs fought for a place beside the heater. 3 children under 3 years of age played on the platform in the rear without distracting the audience. The blue and red-robed saint stood immobile in her place directly behind the speaker, and the world moved on. Mother Catherine does not crush the individual. She encourages individuality. There is an air of gaiety about the enclosure. All of the animals are treated with tenderness. All of her followers are her children. She has as many of one race as the other. I got all kinds of children, but I am their mother. Some of them are saints. Some of them are convicts and jailbirds. Some of them kill babies in their bodies. Some of them walks the streets at night. But they are all my children. God got all kinds. How come I can't love all of mine? So says the beautiful Spirit. Now, y'all go home in faith. Here ends the first reading.
Our second reading is from the 5 Points of the New Theology by James Freeman Clarke. The 4th point of the New Theology will be salvation by character. Salvation means the highest peace and joy of which the soul is capable. It means heaven here and heaven hereafter. This salvation has been explained as something outside of us, some outward gift, some outward condition, place, or circumstance. We speak of heaven as if we could be made happy solely by being put in a happy place. But the true heaven is a state of the soul. Here ends the second reading.
I think I need more than two hands. So, we are going to sing our responsive hymn, and we're going to do this as a round, or canon, or a round. So we'll start it with everybody singing together one time through, and then this side will sing with me part one, and that side will sing part two with Ken. Okay? All right. Turn in your hymnals, the teal ones, to number 1023. Most of you have it. Rise in body or spirit. Again, one time together, then part one, then part two. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all our voices and all our divisions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. And we do. You may be seated.
It's good to be back in the pulpit. I enjoyed last week's question box service. I'm always grateful to get some perspective on your spiritual quests and institutional concerns. And it's fun to have to be a little bit more spontaneous. But I'm also appreciative of the opportunity to offer a more traditional service. Ralph Waldo Emerson once advised aspiring preachers that the true preacher deals out to the people his life passed through the fire of thought. Preparing and delivering sermons is part of my spiritual practice, the opportunity to reflect in conversation with a community and a tradition upon the age of the world, the state of our congregation, and how goes it with my soul, in the hopes that I might stir something within yours. Back to Emerson. His gendered language is thoroughly out of date in a contemporary Unitarian Universalist pulpit, though not, I fear, in a Southern Baptist one. In what seems to me to have been a strangely unbiblical move, their convention, as you probably know, recently voted to expel 2 female-led congregations and limit all pastoral roles to men. The Apostle Paul would have been shocked. Read through his letters in the Christian New Testament, and you'll find him constantly acknowledging and encouraging women's leadership. In his letter to the Romans alone, we find him praising the ministry of Phoebe and recommending that the Christian congregation in Rome support her in any business in which she need your help. And sending greetings to Prisca, Aquila, Mary, who worked so hard for you, Junia, eminent among the apostles, Patrobas, Julia, and Olympus. he probably would have been significantly less shocked to learn that we Unitarian Universalists have been ordaining women since the middle of the 19th century. When Olympia Brown became a minister back in 1863, she was the first woman to be ordained with the consent of her denomination. For us, the thought that a woman could not lead a church is singularly strange. This June, after all, marked the election of the Reverend Dr. Sophia Bentoncourt to be the president of our association. She's the second woman elected to that position and the first openly queer woman of African descent to lead a major denomination in the United States. Her election was followed a couple of weeks later by the election of the first black woman, the Reverend Karen Georgia Thompson, to the presidency of the United Church of Christ. She's now the first female member of the African diaspora to lead a major Christian denomination. I mention all of this because in the age of the world in which we live is one of increasing social fracture. Religious institutions are not immune to this dynamic. Entities like the Southern Baptist Convention seem to be more content to focus on conservatism than Christianity. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians was written at the request of Chloe's people. And when I read some of the news of their internal deliberations, I cannot help but think of the philosopher Corey Robin, who observed that conservatism is best understood as a meditation on the felt experience of having power, seeing it threatened and trying to win it back. This dynamic, he notes, plays out as much in the private sphere as the public one. A key to understanding why white working class conservatism is growing is recognizing that the leadership of women, people of African descent, and other people of color often threatens, in their words, how a father governs his family. We Unitarian Universalists welcome all sorts of families and make no assumption that the family needs to be a particularly patriarchal institution. Families can be matriarchal, queer, or follow other arrangements, be they connected by blood or formed by choice. I suspect that if you are here this morning, you know that we understand that love is love, and that any consenting adult relationship united by love ought to be honored. I know that some of you are here today for the very reason that religious institutions like the Southern Baptist Convention will not celebrate the fullness of your gifts or the beauty of your relationships. And I suspect that you are with us this morning because the Unitarian Universalist tradition demands that we do. That's partially why I suspect we have a growing congregation right now. Other times in July and August, we have a lot of people who are, or oftentimes in July and August, we have a lot of people who are church shopping, looking for a religious community coming to services. This seems to have been especially true as of late. The past several weeks, we've had more people in the second service than we typically do in our autumn services combined. A couple of Sundays in June and July, we even had better attendance between the two services than we had on Christmas Eve. 3 people joined just last week, and we have something like 20 more people in the membership process. And our growth hasn't just been numerical. We've been growing in diversity as well. During our most recent meeting, the Spanish language ministry team, we welcomed new people and new community partners. And that program seems like it's poised to expand in exciting ways over the coming months. In my conversations with new members and visitors, it seems like a good number of you are just learning about our faith tradition. Unitarian Universalism isn't exactly widespread in the South. And you come seeking community, spiritual grounding, and an antidote to what we've come to call the politics of cruelty. But you're not exactly sure what Unitarian Universalism is, so this morning it seemed like a good opportunity to provide a little bit of theological orientation. Certainly, the most important things to know are expressed in the first two phrases of our congregational covenant. Love is the spirit of our congregation. Service is our prayer. We seek to be a community of radical inclusion. We want to be a place where all are welcome to bring the fullness of themselves. We're devoted to building the world we dream about. It will be a world filled with beauty for all people, all being, where each person and everything can be nurtured and sustained, and our planet is not threatened by the climate catastrophe, where the politics of compassion rather than the politics of cruelty govern. Beyond that, there is our name, Unitarian Universalist. Today, our movement is non-creedal. We do not require our members to subscribe to a specific statement of faith, such as those found in more conventional Christian congregations. Yet, curiously, for a non-creedal tradition, the words Unitarian and Universalist are each tied to a specific theological doctrine. Unitarian symbolizes a belief in the unity of God, and with that belief, an affirmation of the humanity of Jesus. Universalists indicate a trust in God's universal love to all creatures, as one of our early religious ancestors put it. More than 60 years ago, the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America joined forces to form the Unitarian Universalist Association. The historic theologies of these two traditions are neither identical nor fully compatible. Like all blended families, over the years, our congregations have had to make sense of their differing inheritances. One particular theological perspective on which our religious ancestors disagreed has to do with that uncomfortable word, salvation. The view of Universalists in the 18th and 19th centuries was summarized in an early article of faith as the belief that after death, God will fully restore the whole human race to happiness. Everyone, in other words, after they die, was thought to go to heaven. You might recall Mark Morrison Reed's description of this historic vision. He has described how universalism came to be called the gospel of God's success. Picturesquely spoken, the image was that of the last unrepentant sinner being dragged screaming and kicking into heaven, unable to resist the power and love of the Almighty. The last unrepentant sinner being dragged kicking and screaming into heaven. The Unitarians had a somewhat different view. They did not believe in universal salvation. Instead, they celebrated what William Ellery Channing called the likeness to God. This was the understanding that each and every person was born with a spark of the divine within. The task of the religious community was to uncover that spark, tend to the flame, so that it might shine more and more brightly until we might achieve what James Freeman Clarke, another 19th century Unitarian, named salvation by character. We can signify each approach to salvation with a single word, the gospel of God's success, being, salvation by character, becoming. Being, becoming, being and becoming. Both suggest a purpose for our religious community, a way in which we are called to care for each other and nurture an alternative to the politics of cruelty. Being, the theologian Matthew Fox has described this perspective as a narrative around our births. Contrary to the Christian doctrine of original sin, which maintains we enter the world as blotches on existence, Fox maintains we burst into the world as original blessings. I'm fairly certain that any of you who have had the privilege to give birth to a child or to be present at a child's birth know this. We attest to it in our hymnal when we sing, "Each night that a child is born is a holy night." Being. We aspire to be a community in which everyone is welcome. It's like I said in our call to worship, drawn from the words of Susan Frederick Gray, immediate past president of our association. If you are an immigrant, a refugee, undocumented, you are welcome here. If you're a Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Christian, Zoroastrian, Buddhist, a theist, or an atheist, you are welcome here. If you're gay or straight, a woman or a man, transgender or queer, you are welcome here. Whoever you are, you, your family, your whole self is welcome here. Being. Those of you, like me, over a certain age might remember this perspective summarized in the popular 70s song by Marlo Thomas. It promised, "You and me are free to be you and me." Free to be you and me. The most vivid description of a community devoted to the proposition of universal salvation that I've run across comes from Zora Neale Hurston's brief text, Mother Catherine. Hurston was a pivotal literary figure in the first half of the 20th century. A leading light of the Harlem Renaissance, her training as an anthropologist led her to author a number of works observing black religion in the South and in the Caribbean. Mother Catherine was one of those. It describes the Church of Mother Catherine Seal, a spiritual leader in New Orleans' lower Ninth Ward who held a universalist theology. Completely unconnected to our movement, Hurston's description of Mother Catherine's religious community offers a picture of universalist heaven. Not only are all kinds of children welcome, but all being is held up as a blessing. Worship is not just a matter of human praise and exuberance. There are canary birds singing and chirping happily, a donkey, a mother goat with her kid, numbers of hens, a sheep, 2 dogs. I'm not sure we could actually handle that kind of environment. But Mother Catherine created one because she believed God got all kinds. How come I can't love all of mine? Being. Here is where the Unitarian objections might come in. Yes, you are an original blessing. Yes, you are welcome here. Yes, you and me are free to be you and me. Yes, love is the spirit of this congregation. Yes, 1,000 times yes to all of that. But it is not enough. Service is our prayer, and read a little bit further down our covenant to seek the truth. Becoming, everyone is welcome here, but we have not already built the world we dream about. Each of us always has work to do towards becoming a better person. Religion should be about transformation, helping us to uncover the spark of the divine or our highest potential within. And here I fear we struggle. In our efforts to build an inclusive community, we sometimes expect people to have already arrived at the point where they recognize everyone as an original blessing. We want white folks like me to have already given up our frightful addiction to the poison of white supremacy. We want men to have already moved beyond toxic masculinity. We want cisgendered folks to fully accept transgender people, even as they are just coming to understand that gender is fluid and, like race, a social construct. This, of course, comes with a paradox. If we're going to fully live into our vision of radical inclusion, then we need to have an environment where people who are not part of the traditionally white, male-dominated culture are safe from constant microaggressions and even real aggression. At a time of rising misogyny, women need to feel safe within the congregation. At a time when white supremacist and nativist movements are growing, people of color and immigrants need to know that this is their community. At a time when LGBTQ communities are under assault, folks from those communities need to know that they are an original blessing. At a time of growing economic inequality, when union organizers are targeted and fired by companies like Starbucks, working class people need to know that there are religious communities that support working class power. The challenge then is, how do we as a congregation hold these two things, being and becoming, in tension? I'm reminded of an account of conversion that James Luther Adams, a 20th century Unitarian theologian, offered of a racial bigot in one of his essays. In the early 1950s, the man was trying to block the First Unitarian Church of Chicago, one of our few historically multiracial congregations, from committing not just to racial integration, but active outreach to the city's African American community. After finally recognizing that the way forward for his congregation was through an intentional outreach effort, he confessed, "The purpose of the church is to get a hold of people like me and change them. The purpose of the church is to get a hold of people like me and change them." I hesitate to imagine how much damage he did, how many acts of micro and macro aggression he committed to the members of the congregation who were people of color before he came to that realization. Being and becoming, the two visions of salvation are in tension. Perhaps it's simply like that line from Fyodor Dostoevsky: "Love in action is harsh and terrible compared to love in dreams." Playing the role of the preacher, I feel like I'm sometimes cast as the person with the answers. But love and action is a harsh and terrible thing compared to love and dreams. And really, though, I just have questions, discomforts, and an urgent need to, though the road be rough and rocky, keep on a path that is both being and becoming. Being and becoming. I'm not quite sure how we do this thing we try to do, where we welcome everyone, confess that we have work to do, and somehow, some way, still have the patience and compassion with each other to do that work. Some of what I know about it, though, like much of what I know, comes from my time with the labor movement. Now, I'm not entirely certain if this story connects to congregational life or is instructive for the rest of you, but it's one of these things that I come back to and turn over and over in my mind when I consider the challenges of becoming a truly multiracial congregation as we grow into our vision and mission. You see, congregations have a choice as to whether or not they want to be multiracial. Even today, 20 years into the 21st century, Sunday morning remains the most segregated hour of the week. Unions, however, do not have that luxury. They have to be multiracial. If workers are going to come together and effectively build power against the power and principalities of the day, the massive wealth disparity that exists in this country, then they have to include everyone, because the workforce includes everyone. Well, about 20 years ago, I was involved in an effort to organize a union in Chicago. When you're trying to organize a union, one of the first things you do is identify the people who are leaders at work. Now, these are not necessarily the sorts of people who hold positions of power, the managers or supervisors or the like. Instead, they're the folks who other people look up to and to some extent follow. If these people, these leaders, support the union, then the people who respect them will join in the effort. One of the tasks of the organizers was to try and recruit different leaders into the union. And one day, the job fell to me to talk to someone who was known to have a particularly unpleasant personality. He was an older white guy who was known for making disparaging remarks about just about everyone who was not white or male. And I was sent to talk to him because, well, as you can tell, I'm white and male. We met in a rough bar, the kind where the floors are a bit sticky and your choices for a beverage are either a cheap beer or a cheap whiskey. And the first part of our conversation pretty much went the way that you would expect it. He said just about every sort of disgusting thing that you might imagine. But finally, after sitting through that barrage for at least an hour, I was able to turn the conversation to work. How is it at work? I asked him. What would you change if you could? How could you make those changes? And most importantly, who needs to be in the union for you to make those changes? And somehow, some way, after something like 2 or 3 uncomfortable hours, I convinced him to join the union. And he went on to be one of our best organizers. He brought all kinds of people in, the very people who he had long said disparaging things about. Somehow, a light had gone off in his head, and he had recognized that if he was going to have a better workplace, then he was going to have to work with everyone, even the people he disparaged. And cooperate together is then what those workers did. Within a year, they ended up winning the first wage gain that anyone in their industry in the entire country had won for more than a decade. And the union even formed a LGBTQ caucus to address the needs of members from those communities at work. Becoming. I still have a lot of questions about that experience. But I suspect that somehow, some way, the path to building a multiracial congregation and a functioning multiracial democracy lies through moments like it, moments where we're able to ask the question, who needs to come together to do this? For it began with a recognition that somehow, some way, we're all in it together. We're all a blessing. But also rested on the acknowledgement that we each have work to do, that we are each still becoming. We're not here perfectly formed. We're each challenged if we want to build the world we dream about, to become better and little by little uncover the spark within. That it might be so, I invite the congregation to say, Amen.
As you turn in your hymnals to number 1028 in the teal hymnals, 1028, I would like to thank Ken Gale for being here today and sharing his gift of music. And I encourage you all to rise in body or spirit as we sing one of my favorite hymns, The Fire of Commitment.
When
invite you to recite the words found in the order of service as we extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Being and becoming. May we be a community of radical acceptance, just as we challenge each other to be our best selves. Go in peace, go in love. May our lives be a blessing. Amen. Thank you so much for watching our service today. We're glad you're part of our online community, where we welcome people who are diverse in faith, ethnicity, history, as well as gender identity and sexual orientation. There are many different ways you can get involved in our community. One you can do right now is by clicking like below or subscribing to our channel. If you're interested in joining our congregation, please email us at membership@firstuuhouston.org. Thanks so much for joining us.